In the 1980s and early 1990s, wildlife managers moved many orphaned elephant calves from Kruger into Pilanesberg, creating a population made mostly of young animals and many males. Those elephants were stuck inside a fenced reserve of roughly 570 square kilometers, so they could not wander away the way elephants normally do. Between about 1992 and 1997, that young male-heavy group began killing a lot of white rhinos. More than 40 rhino deaths were reported, and some elephants attacked people and vehicles. Scientists and reporters at the time pointed to one immediate trigger. Those young bulls were entering musth, the testosterone-fueled state, much earlier and staying in musth much longer than expected. This was not wild, random violence. It was a chain that began with orphaning, moved through confinement, and ended with hormonal storms in bulls with no older males to steady them. To understand why this happened, we need to see what elephants normally do with their older males. In unbroken elephant societies, experienced bulls act like social brakes. Older males spend time around younger males, and their presence shortens and delays musth and subordinates. Those older bulls also teach younger bulls how to compete without killing, by stepping in or by simply being there. At Pilanesberg, the founding group lacked those mature mentors because many older bulls had been removed during Kruger culls. The fenced park meant young males could not leave to escape dominance pressure or find older bulls elsewhere. The result was a population where hormonal episodes ran unchecked and young bulls formed tight bachelor groups that escalated into aggressive behavior. Researchers later pointed at this social breakdown and the premature prolonged musth as the core mechanisms behind the rhino killings and dangerous attacks. The violence peaked in the mid-1990s and shocked managers and conservationists. Park records and newspaper accounts show a spike in rhino mortalities and repeated incidents involving the young bulls. Rangers were baffled because elephants normally do not hunt rhinos, and even aggressive bulls usually avoid that kind of killing. The pattern looked like a gang problem in human terms, groups of young males acting together, testing boundaries and escalating conflicts until they hurt other species and people. Scientists collecting field observations noted that musth episodes in Pilanesberg, bulls were unusually long and started at younger ages than in intact populations. The park's small size and fences meant there was nowhere for subordinate bulls to disperse when tensions rose, and that spatial squeeze helped amplify confrontations until managers had to think hard about active intervention. In February 1998, Rob Slotow and colleagues made a bold, deliberate choice to change that social mix. They translocated 6 mature adult male elephants from Kruger into Pilanesberg, bringing in the social experience the resident bulls had lacked. Within months, field reports and later analyses recorded striking changes. The number of rhino killings dropped noticeably, and the young males' musth periods shortened and occurred at older ages. Observers recorded fewer dangerous group attacks and a gradual return to calmer dominance rituals. This intervention did not magically fix everything, but the timing and consistency of the change in behavior suggests a causal link between introducing those older bulls and the normalization of the younger male's hormonal cycles. Slotow's team emphasized that the adult bulls exerted social control, in effect teaching or intimidating the youngsters out of extreme aggression. The working biological explanation is straightforward and physical. Older bulls suppress or shorten musth in younger males through presence and direct interactions, which changes hormone cycles. When those elders patrol an area, subordinate bulls spend less time in prolonged high testosterone states because they face social checks and risks from dominant males. In Pilanesberg, adding 6 mature bulls changed the daily balance of dominance encounters. The young males spent more time avoiding trouble and less time locked in violent hormone-driven episodes. Field notes and later papers describe exactly this pattern: shorter musth windows, fewer prolonged hormone peaks, and a calmer social order. It's a social thermostat, not a mystery potion. Older bulls physically alter the behavior and bodies of younger bulls by being there and by enforcing old rules of elephant society. But this neat story carries important caveats, and researchers warn managers not to see it as a universal fix. Translocations like Slotow's carry real risks. Moving big animals can cause deaths, spread disease, and stress, both migrants and residents. The literature on elephant moves repeatedly stresses careful planning, health checks, and monitoring after release. Pilanesberg worked in this case, partly because the introduced bulls integrated without catastrophic fallout, and partly because the reserve's managers kept a close eye on outcomes. Yet other fenced reserves with different sizes, different founding histories, or different ecological pressures might not see the same benefits. Scientists note that alternative explanations could also have helped reduce rhino deaths after 1998, including changes in resource availability or natural demographic shifts. So the causation, while plausible, is not an absolute certainty. There's also a deeper human side paradox. The root of the problem was our own management choices. The Kruger culls and the decision to establish Pilanesberg as a fenced, managed park created the young, male-heavy population in the first place. Conservation actions that break up family groups or remove older animals can create social vacuum effects that later require more intervention. Some experts argue the long-term fix is to change policies, stop large-scale culling, maintain wildlife corridors so animals can disperse, and preserve natural age structures rather than rely on reactive fixes. In other words, treating symptoms by moving adult bulls is sometimes necessary, but preventing orphaning and fragmentation upstream could avoid creating those violent social dynamics at all. The Pilanesberg case forces a choice: keep patching problems with risky moves, or redesign management to respect elephant social lives from the start. The Slotow intervention did, however, influence conservation thinking worldwide, and it changed how managers talk about human decisions in animal social systems. After Pilanesberg, park managers across southern Africa began considering the role of older males in regulating populations. Field studies in other reserves recorded similar short-term calming effects when mature bulls were present. At the same time, reviews cautioned that moving adults can fail or cause harm, and they called for strict protocols. The practical takeaway is layered. Introducing elders can work to stabilize young male behavior, but it must be weighed against mortality risk, disease transmission, and the possibility of simply shifting problems elsewhere. Conservation moved from blunt control to a more social, behavioral management approach, but always with the warning label that social engineering of wild animals is delicate and uncertain. The human drama of Pilanesberg also shows why simple myths spread easily. One myth says throwing in a few old bulls is a quick, risk-free cure for rogue elephant gangs. Another myth says the elephants became violent for no reason, that they are just naturally aggressive. The reality sits between those extremes and is messier. The evidence links orphaning, fences, a young male bias, and premature prolonged musth to the violent episode. The Slotow move correlated with fewer rhino killings and shorter musth windows, but scientists emphasize context matters. Reserve size, original population history, and follow-up monitoring all shape outcomes. That nuance gets lost in headlines, but the real lesson is about humans creating conditions that then require careful, evidence-based fixes rather than simplistic fixes that ignore trade-offs. Back in everyday terms, the Pilanesberg story is a warning about tinkering with social animals. When people split families, clear corridors, or remove elders, the consequences are physical and measurable. In Pilanesberg, those consequences were more than theoretical. Rhinos died, rangers faced danger, and managers had to mount a risky, expensive intervention. The success of introducing 6 mature bulls in 1998 provide the proof of concept that social structure can regulate hormones and behavior, yet it also stands as a reminder that prevention is usually safer than cure. The final human choice is concrete: change policies that orphan animals and trap them inside small fenced parks, or keep fixing symptoms with translocations that carry real risks. Managers now have a clearer toolbox, but the moral and practical responsibility for the outcomes remains undeniably human.